Great. Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Saul. Let me get my screen shared with you all here. Perfect. Great. So today I'll be talking about what makes good UX design. This is for Concordia University St. Paul's ITM 510 Research and Information Technology class with Professor Nina Hunsicker. Again, my name is Andrew Saul. Today's date is August 24th, 2022. Really get started here. So a bit of an agenda of what I'll be talking about today. I'll be talking about the study, the specific aims of the study, the background and the significance of why the study happened. The 3, 4, 5 different areas I'll be talking about based on their references is the spur of innovation, citizens and UX, a bus riders app, eye tracking technology, UX research methods, and then we'll be getting into the preliminary data, experimental design and methods used, the limitations and scope of the study, and then my overall final thoughts of the topic. So let's go ahead and get started here. So the study. So what is UX design? So basically, UX design is made to help out users, first-hand users. I'm sure you've used a product or being a digital product or a physical product that hasn't worked in a way where you wanted it to, and it's been very frustrating. That's what UX designers help with, is that they help make the product more useful and helpful, a little less frustrating to use. The point of UX design is basically to help out to solve problems for the user. At the end of the day, the user should be the center focus of the products that are being made. And a lot of industries are now realizing this, and the demand for UXers are really skyrocketing right now. Who will benefit from this research? UX designers for sure, as well as anybody that, or markets that are trying to figure out what, they're getting their groundings, their footings in UX design and trying to figure out how they can get started. Who are the users? Users are just people who use the product, so such as like your phone device or your laptop, anybody that uses the actual product. Identifying the users is a whole other thing. Identifying your target market and your demographic, that's a whole other thing. And that gets into the UX research side. What makes good UX design? This is what we'll be getting into. Well, there's 5 different study areas that I tapped into for this research proposal, and it'll help kind of define that question there. Great. So some of these specific aims. The first piece is about improving conceptual framework, spur innovation. This is basically a first piece of literature that reads the importance of UX design and the impact that it makes on all the products and for the organization that it creates. So they're seeing that there's a lot of innovation and a lot of motivation that's coming out of these different frameworks that are being created, because once people's mindset are on a specific framework, then they're like, okay, we know how to go about this now. We're going to move forward with this project, and we know what to do exactly. The second specific aim is how citizens interact with their city information. This is basically about how users in a city receive the information from the government and the government websites, mobile sites, and information about the city. The third is a bus riders app. I'm trying to get from how riders can get from point A to point B a lot faster. There's a really interesting study that we'll be talking about for that. The fourth one here is groundbreaking eye tracking technology. This is a new technology that's being introduced in UX, and it's really showing some benefits that we've never been able to see before that users are showing us. The fifth one is gathering research information on users. So this is basically a how-to view, in-depth view on what works, what doesn't work for different user research methods. Background and significance. So basically, what are the goals of UX design? The goal of UX design is to create products and services that are actually useful to the users and they make the lives of people easier. And then it's leads to deeming what makes good UX design. So the significance of the problem deeming is what makes good UX design. It's important having a huge product, a huge impact on the field of UX design. Um, this needs to be there needs to be some sort of guide or process or documentation to help out the creation process. There are a couple things out there and steps that UXers can follow, but there's nothing exactly in the books that shows what steps they need to follow. The digital world growth is skyrocketing, which is causing the demand in UX designers for sure. Um, yeah, huge demand for UX designers, but it's pretty competitive right now too. Spirit of innovation. This is a um, off of a building conceptual framework. So again, with the whole framework and the UX is going off the framework to make their work easier, this is an example of that. So from Blair, Early, and Zinder, on page 93, they said 4 common interface types that were described to students are linear, hierarchy, matrix, and web. The assignment was to evaluate each of these in relation to the content types, content strategies, and user intentions. So these frameworks, they build that familiar feeling for the users. Most users that want to use a website or app, they feel familiar. They want to be able to go on there right away and know what they're getting themselves into, and they just feel comfortable, like it's second nature to them. Citizens in UX. This is a really interesting study here. We all know that city information, if you're trying to gather city information about your town that you're in, it can be really difficult and hard to come by. The goal of this study was to make these pieces of information more useful and easier to find, with the goal being to strengthen the trust and the culture of the cities. This quote from Goldsmith and Kleeman states, when city data is accessible, we design curated citizens who have more faith in the city and are willing to become involved with efforts for public benefit. And improved UX can help them use the data to build momentum for change among the citizens. So this is really a win-win for the city. Not only are citizens, this study was actually in Pittsburgh, but not only has this city been able to gather more information about, or not gather, but get a hold of more data easier about their city, but this just makes them happier about where they're at, because some cities may feel like you're hiding information if you can't get to it that easy. The Bus Riders app. This is a great example of how UX design can be used in the real world, how technology can help solve a physical problem. So basically, the goal of this app was helping to get riders from point A to point B. This quote from Federico and Perea states, the passenger using the bus stop application select a previously used route specifies a new one. He can save the route for another use. After logging the desired trip, the passenger receives a confirmation and can either confirm or correct the request. So again, technology solving a physical problem. So the app that the users are now using it's connecting to what the bus driver sees. They basically just select, in a way, you're telling the bus driver where you need to go. So this cuts out the middleman, where the bus driver isn't making all these pointless stops, because once they stop, if no bus rider needs to get off, then they're just wasting time. So this is able to make rides a lot more efficient, cheaper, and everybody is more happier at the end of the day. Eye tracking in design. This is one of those new areas in design, UX design, it's kind of booming right now. This is a kind of a map of different key tracking of what it could look into and what the users are looking into, based on the website here. So this is just a little example. You see a lot of people looking into the buy now button there and kind of the call to action buttons. But it also tells you where a lot of users aren't looking, which could give you answers to, does this make sense to have this here, or should we just completely get rid of the button? All this, so from this quote here from Romano and Shao, they state all this research about how users read on the web brings up an interesting question. Do users read this way because the content is designed, because of because of the way content is designed, or is content designed this way because it's how the users read? So this is really a, like eye-opening thing here, no pun intended, about how it kind of gives us a more accurate glimpse of what the users are actually looking at and what's piquing their interest in terms of what's on the screen. UX research methods. This is basically a how-to guide for UX research and what are some of the go-to methods that UXers use, as well as what the importance of the UX research. Without UX research, you'd basically be throwing a dart at like blindly at a dart table. So it's just like without it, you're really lacking that connection with the users and what they really need. So without UX research, there really is no UX. UX research is really a core piece of what UX is. Prioritization. This was one of the examples from UX research methods by Baxter, Courage, and Kane, 2015. They state, you must prioritize the issues and research you have obtained and then make recommendations based on those priorities. Prioritization conveys your assessment of the impact of these research findings. Really just prioritizing what needs to get done. Is it they call it a P0 issue? Is it a P1? Is it a P2? If it's a P0, you're going to want to act on that right away. This means that your application shuts off right away and users aren't able to make that purchase, or they're not able to use the app at all, really. A P2 is something like, the user wants to change the profile picture, but it's not working. So the whole function of the app still works, but that's a very minor detail. Yes, it'd be nice to get fixed, but it's not like a top priority to get done. The preliminary data that was used in this study for UX citizens, this is developed by the city's analytical team. And it was kind of used as a catch-all search bar with a date. So basically, citizens could look up any sort of information they wanted to on the search bar by selecting the date and selecting by just typing what they needed. So that was a great way for them to obtain data easier. The Bus Rider app, 53% of the users were female, 55.7% were between 21 to 30 years old. The bus riders were in Sao Paulo. The riders helped to answer the question of what makes good UX design. They really helped format what this app could look like and build it up. So there's some background information there. For for the research methods used, basically the goal of all these methods were that they were very user-centered, and they were always focusing on the user and putting them in the front and center of what needs to get done. Especially the core of what makes good UX design is putting the user up in front, knowing the user and what their issues are by UX research. So huge there. The experimental design methods, when there are measurable themes in the data that can be found, it makes the creation of better user experience that are easier to dig out. So when there's other themes, you can find these themes and you can find insights in the data. You can take those, prioritize them, and then you go about making iterations and then testing again. So it's just this whole content cycle. There are different methods used in each study based on what the research goals were. Once the research goals are set, you can kind of that's kind of the key for the UXer, is that you set your research goals and then you move along with those with the questions, and then make iterations, test, ideate, define, and then staying on top of the focal point of the research. So you really want to stay focused on that center point. What's the goal of the study that you're doing? And then the technology that is coming out for UX, such as eye tracking. And we talked a little bit about this already, but From the Committee of Information Technology, they state advances in information technology, IT, are far from over, and some of the biggest improvements in areas like artificial intelligence are likely still to come. It's AI Day for Tesla later in September, I believe. So that's something cool, something I'm looking forward to watching. But yeah, eye tracking and UX is for sure going to be a huge tool and huge help to the field overall. Limitations in scope. There were limitations to the study. Everything cannot be covered in just one research project like this one. One end is that there's no current study in this paper based on the question of what makes good a UX design. Um, and then looking at other research that has been done, connecting with new trends, that's basically what helped answer the question. Not knowing the researchers who did the studies and the backgrounds, I don't know who they are personally. I don't know what their backgrounds are exactly. The scope was determining what makes good UX design and what can be found in trends. So really looking at past trends and what could happen in the future and filling in those gaps and those gray areas in between to help answer that question. And basically the main goal here was to focus the scope and guide it by the hypothesis. So this helped get it all centered throughout the study and figure out what makes a good UX design. Yeah, some final thoughts here. Digital or physical products and services that are used every day to help the lives of humans make it more efficient to get work done. Again, not all products are created equal, and people are still going to get frustrated with them. But the goal of the UX designer is to help mitigate that frustration. The statement of specific aims, what I talked about in this presentation are the statement of specific aims and objectives, the experimental approaches to UX, all those pieces, putting the user front and center, which is really the core of what makes good UX design. And finally, is that the future of UX is really bright. I just learned about this career just a few years ago, and it's yeah, the demand for UX designers is really high. The competition is also really high out there now too. So it'll be really interesting to see how many more companies adapt UXers, and once they find out the need for them, then they'll jump on board for that hopefully. So those are my final thoughts about the project. Here are my references I used for the presentation and pieces of the project. And that is all. So thank you very much for listening. I had a really good class. I enjoyed the time and learned a lot. So thank you very much and have a great rest of your week. Thanks. Bye-bye.